Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're going to fundamentally shift your mindset about productivity, success, and, well, how you spend your time. We're completely dismantling the idea that you have to just grind yourself to the bone to hit your goals. Instead, we're looking at a scientifically proven principle that shows how you can actually achieve significantly more by doing a whole lot less. So let's dive right into this. We're all programmed with this deeply ingrained societal myth. From a super young age, we're taught that working harder automatically equals better outcomes. Like we think if we put in 10 units of effort, we should get exactly 10 units of reward, right? But let me ask you, do more actions always equal more results? The shocking truth, as we're about to see, is absolutely not. In fact, most of the actions you take on a daily basis are barely moving the needle at all. Which brilliantly illustrates where this whole concept actually began. Meet Vilfredo Pareto. He was an Italian economist, and one day he was just observing his garden, and he noticed something highly unusual but really fascinating. He realized that a massive 80% of his peas were coming from just 20% of the pea pods in his garden. The vast majority of his entire harvest was being produced by a tiny minority of the plants. And, when he looked a little deeper, he realized this wasn't just true for his vegetables. It was actually a mathematical reality woven right into the fabric of the world. Which brings us to the core definition, the Pareto principle, or as it's more commonly known today, the 80-20 rule. It's a scientific principle stating that roughly 80% of your outcomes or results come from just 20% of your efforts or causes. So the really crucial takeaway here is that our few correct actions generate the vast majority of our success. It completely proves that effort and reward are just not equally distributed. A really small fraction of what you do actually matters, and the rest? Well, it's mostly just noise. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the universal proof of this rule. Then we'll see exactly how to apply it to your business, your social life, and finally, your studies. All right, section 1, proof it is everywhere. Now, right now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, that worked for an Italian guy's garden, but does it really apply to my life? The answer is a resounding yes. It's literally a universal law embedded right into our daily reality. Just look at these rapid-fire data points. Researchers have studied this across countless fields. 20% of criminals commit 80% of the crimes. 20% of drivers on the road cause 80% of the accidents. Even in nature, 20% of the clouds produce 80% of the rain. Seriously, go look in your own closet right now. I can almost guarantee that 20% of your clothes are worn 80% of the time. Even in the entertainment world, 20% of authors sell 80% of all books. Now, the exact numbers might fluctuate a little bit. Maybe it's 75-25 or 90-10 sometimes, but the underlying principle remains undeniably true. A tiny fraction of causes leads to the vast majority of effects.
Moving on to section 2, applying 80-20 to business.
So now that we know it's a proven reality, let's explore how this impacts the commercial world. Business is actually the original field where the 80-20 principle gained massive popularity. And the contrast between how failing businesses and successful businesses allocate their time is staggering. Think about startups. Founders notoriously make the mistake of pouring all their time, energy, and money into the superficial 80%. Things like, what the company logo looks like or the exact aesthetic of their website. Now, these things matter a little, sure, but nobody buys a bad product just because the logo is pretty. Real startup success comes from focusing on the 20% that actually matters, perfecting a core product or service that literally makes a customer's life easier or better. Only once that 20% is completely nailed down should you even focus on marketing. And even then, you should really only focus on the 20% of platforms giving you the absolute maximum response. And this brings us to the most crucial business metric you will probably ever learn: 20%. Why? Because 20% of your clients are going to bring in 80% of your total profits. You absolutely need to laser focus your attention on serving that specific group. But here's the fascinating flip side to that. 20% of your clients will also generate 80% of your complaints and headaches. The 80-20 rule really forces you to identify your best clients so you can nurture them, and identify your worst clients so you can stop wasting 80% of your energy trying to please them. Up next, section 3, quality over quantity in friendships. Let's step away from business for a second and challenge our brain's totally flawed social programming. As humans, we naturally tend to believe that more friends automatically equals more happiness. We try to be friends with everyone, right? Even people we don't particularly enjoy hanging out with. But the reality is quite different. 80% of your happiness and fulfillment actually comes from just 20% of your friends. Think about it.
Spreading yourself way too thin, trying to please everyone, and spending time with people who just drain you is a massive waste of your limited energy. If you actually apply the 80-20 rule to your social life, it means you stop trying to maintain dozens of superficial relationships. Instead, you heavily invest your time entirely into that 20% of people who genuinely make you feel good, the ones you actually enjoy being around. Doing this saves massive amounts of time and honestly brings you significantly more joy.
All right, section 4, working smarter in studies. To really understand how powerful the 80-20 principle can be in your education or even your professional development, let's look at two very different types of students facing the exact same exams. On one side, we have friend 1. Now, this is the student who pulls all-nighters, tries to read every single page of the textbook, and as a result, just suffers from terrible focus. On the other side, we have friend 2. This student studies for maybe just 4 to 6 hours total. Yet when the results come out, friend 2 consistently gets equal or even better marks than friend 1. Of course, friend 1 couldn't believe it, probably assuming friend 2 was just some naturally gifted genius. But that wasn't the case at all. Friend 2 was simply, and perhaps even unknowingly, applying the 80-20 principle to their studies. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the smart friend pulled it off. First, instead of trying to read 100% of the material and inevitably forgetting it all, they focused on the 20% of material that actually yielded 80% of the exam marks. They identified past questions and key topics heavily highlighted by their teachers. Second, they didn't try to study 24/7. Humans just can't focus indefinitely. So they studied only during their peak energy windows, between morning and night, totally ignoring the times their brain was just too tired to retain any information. And third, the exact moment they felt their focus dropping, they stopped. They took walks, got some fresh air, and recharged. Because high-quality study on the right material is going to be low-quality, exhausted study on everything, every single time.
And our final section, section 5, achieve more in less time.
So as we bring this explainer to a close, let's summarize the ultimate mindset reset we've achieved today. The 80-20 rule is essentially a cheat code for life, if you're brave enough to use it. It is definitely not about being lazy, and it's absolutely not an excuse to do nothing. Rather, it teaches us to ruthlessly audit our lives. We have to stop doing the trivial 80% of tasks that give us very few results and pour all of our passion and energy into the vital 20% that actually matters. When you do this, you're getting double the results in half the time. And that leaves you totally free to pursue other important things or, just genuinely enjoy your life. I really want to leave you with this final thought. Look at your calendar, look at your business, look at your social life. Which 80% of your daily tasks are really just noise? And more importantly, which 80% are you going to cut starting today? It's time to stop working harder and start working smarter. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.